Here's what nobody tells you about those scraps. They're not just leftovers, they're possibilities of you becoming the quilter you want to become. Now, welcome to Quilt Crafters Corner. I'm Roberta, and I am passionate about making the quilts I want to make. But it's not just those scraps. It kind of identifies who I am. And that's what I love about quilting. I can take random pieces of fabric, put them together, and make something really unique and original to me. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about scraps and some of those things that you can do with them, but I really want to open the door to possibilities for you. I want you to look at your scraps maybe a little bit different and think of them in a new way, in a new term. So I've been playing with this medallion idea, and I love medallion quilts because you can do so many interesting things with just your scraps, and this could be a start of a center of a really big quilt, or I could just put a border on this and it could be a nice children's size quilt. There are so many ideas out there, and that's why I love half square triangles, because you could do a ton with them. I think there's like 35 different ways you can put half square triangles together and get something really unique and original to you. So let's take a look at this. This started out, like I said, as a medallion quilt, and I like it the way it is. But then I got to thinking, well, what if I started playing with this and moving some of these pieces around and get something a little bit different? So let me show you what I'm talking about here, because each time I move these pieces, it gets another different look, and it brings in a whole new possibility of what you can do with it. So if I just change these to this, there's another way to look at it. Now, what if I did this? Once again, it changes the whole look just by moving some pieces around. And that's what I find really fascinating and really interesting about how you use up half square triangles, but also this medallion idea of putting blocks together and getting this centerpiece that we can then add upon. Now, there's a couple more things that I can do with this that is even more interesting. So let's take down some of these and let's move this to there. Now, just by taking out two half square triangles, putting in two blocks, and moving them all around, you can get a heart out of this. And this could be really a pretty quilt just by adding maybe another layer of hearts all the way around this. Like I said, there are so many ways to take the start of your scraps, because that's all this really is these are all these all started out as 5-inch squares left over from cuttings of backs and things like that in order to start to develop this quilt top. And this is a fun way to use up those scraps, and it gives you this sense of becoming that quilter of, uniqueness. Your originality comes out in each quilt that you make. And so that's really the fun of playing with these types of blocks in order to get the quilt that you want to make. So this is just one of those really simple ideas that you can do with, 5-inch squares. Let me show you. So here we are at the cutting table, and this was just this material. Most of this material is left over from backs. Like I've got a ton of this that was cut up, left over from backs, and that one too. And I kind of used up the dark on some of them, And it just starts with a 5-inch square. Now, in order to make this really work, you're going to have to cut down your solid squares down to 4.5, because once you sew this, what I'll do is I'll draw a line from point to point, and I'll sew on each side of this. And this is really a simple, way to, you'll get two out of just this one. I'll sew down one side and then up the other and then cut it apart. And then I'll have two 4.5-inch. They need to be trimmed up. Make sure you trim these up because you want those nice points. You want that nice where your seam comes out right there at the tip, and it really makes for a much nicer point when you start putting things together. So this is, like I said, these are all left over from scraps. Some of them I think are from a charm pack that got thrown in here that I didn't use up on something else. And there's all kinds of, different fabrics that I've got here. And I just started pulling out what I wanted to use. And actually, I started pulling out things that needed to be used up. And that's where this all came from. So real simple way to use up those half square triangle, or to use up those 5-inch squares, and you get half square triangles out of them. Just make sure you trim them up. That way you get that nice crisp point at each end of it. Now let me show you another idea. And this started with these same 5-inch squares that I have here. And this kind of started as one of those, I believe they call them a color wash type of thing. And I really thought, what can I do with these squares that I already have cut, and how can I put them together? So let me show you that. Okay, once again, this started out with just 5-inch squares. And what I did is I have a lot of these strips of solids that I thought, well, what if I was going to sew them on, and I went, I think I'm going to, I ended up folding them in half, ironing them, and then sewing them to the edge of the square, and then sewing the squares together. Because I have this nice little element of openness here. Now, I could either leave it like that, or what I'm thinking is when I go to quilt this, I can turn this edge up and get this nice little rounded edge on it. Let me pin this. So it now becomes more of a nice curve to it. So this is something that I thought about when I go to quilt this, because if I, just roll all these edges up and just sew all along there, I will get this nice curvy shape that goes through it. Now this is a great way to use up some of those, colors that we have and we don't know what to do with. I started with the yellows and worked out to the blues, greens, reds, and purples. And then I've got lavender out here at the edge. And this simple, very simple, just threw it up on the design wall. And once it started going together, it went together really fast. Another great way to use up those 5-inch squares or that leftover fabric you have from quilt backs, because I get a lot of leftovers and I try to use them up as efficiently as possible. And sometimes just cutting them into 5-inch squares makes a really good quilt, and it goes together quickly. So I hope you enjoyed today's topic of half square triangles and how to use up those 5-inch squares. I have a workshop coming up soon, and I will leave a link in the description for you. Come join me. We're going to talk more about how to use up those scraps, what you can do with them, and the most efficient way. So I hope to see you then. Until then, happy quilting.